Hey everybody, today I'm talking about London by Martin Wallace. Now, London is a card-based board game for 2 to 4 players, takes about an hour to an hour and a half to play. The game was originally released in 2010, but there was a second edition released in, I believe it was 2017 by Osprey Games, which is the version I'm going to be reviewing. I've not played the original version, so I can't really comment on that one. The idea of the game is that we are trying to rebuild the city of London after the Great Fires of 1666. Every player is going to basically build their own tableau of cards, which are different buildings and stuff like that, trying to get the most points as possible. The game is, as I said, kind of focused on cards mainly, as you're trying to manage your hand and stuff like that. And mechanically, the game is boiled down into 4 pretty simple actions, which is, or each player's turn is going to consist of selecting one of those 4 actions and doing the appropriate thing. So the first action is very simple, simply drawing 3 cards into your hand. The second one is to buy a Borough card, and these Borough cards are kind of lingering abilities, or they kind of give you one-off benefits such as points or drawing more cards into your hand or losing poverty, which I'll cover in a second. The other action is to play cards from your hand, because you've got 3 different basically suits of cards, all made up of different colours. And in order to play a card, you not only have to pay the cost associated to that card, so everything can cost money, but you also have to discard a card of the like colour of that card. So if I wanted to play a brown card, I'd have to discard another brown card in order to play it. And obviously that's a weighted decision, because you have to factor in what you are dismissing in order to use what you want to use. And as I said, it also has, each card can have a cost associated to them as well, in terms of pounds. When cards are played, some have kind of actions associated to them, which give instant abilities, but most of them will just sit there until you choose to select the other kind of action you can take in your turn, which is activate your city. So when you do activate your city, you will basically trigger all the abilities that go from the cards that you've played by discarding these other cards. And you're going to basically choose to when you play those cards, you're going to choose to either put them on new kind of stacks or kind of lay them on top of an existing stack, because a lot of the cards, when you activate the cities, when you reap the rewards, which can give you points or money, or let you get rid of poverty, or they can do all different kind of things, you're going to have to flip them face down, which kind of means that card's done. But the stack of cards will still remain there, which can be very important, because every time you run your city, you have to take a amount of poverty, which are these kind of accumulating negative points, into your pool. And you're going to get a poverty point for each stack of cards you've got in front of you in your tableau. And you're also going to get a poverty for each card remaining in your hand. So when you've got an absolutely full hand of cards, it's probably not the ideal time to be running your city. Poverty is quite interesting, because the actual amount you have isn't overly important, as long as the other players have a similar amount. Because at the end of the game, you are going to score negative points based on the difference between yourself and the player with the least amount of poverty. So as long as you guys are pretty much on a par throughout the game, it's not going to be that drastic. But if you completely disregard the idea of poverty, then you're going to get hit hard at the end of the game, and it's probably going to cost you the game ultimately. There is when you run your city, sometimes you have to pay additional costs. So some might say discard another card from your hand. Some might say pay money each time you do it. Some might not even have to be or flipped over at all. So they're going to be permanent abilities that you can use again and again and again. And they might be things such as maybe take £1 for each brown card you've got in your city, or stuff like that. So the symbology and the different things that the cards do, there is actually not that much going on. There is simply get your points, get money. I think it's maybe draw cards or stuff like that, and yeah, so there's not actually a lot of text-based card abilities or anything like that. So in terms of what the cards do, it's very easy to digest. Another factor in the game is the discarding of the cards, because as I said, when you play those cards, you do have to put them, or you have to discard one of the matching colours. But a cool thing about that is that when you discard them, they don't just go on a generic pile or never be seen again. They'll go on basically a communal discard board, which means that they'll go face up, and when other players draw cards, they'll not only be able to draw from the kind of face down stack of cards as you normally would in most board games, you can actually draw from the face up pile of discard cards that other players have already gotten rid of. So there's another wrinkle there that the game has factored in. I do really like that idea. And it's a great way to kind of inject a bit of strategy into the game, because you not only the weight of your decision is what card you want to play, you've also got to factor in what you're going to discard, because you might be advantaging other players because they might want those cards that you discard. So a nice touch there. And every time these cards are discarded, the board is kind of flushed, and it keeps rotating. So sometimes they will be taken out of the game for good. So there's not an overwhelming amount of cards available on that discard board. The game also includes this idea of taking loans. So when you run out of money, because money is a fairly tight resource in this game, you can optionally take a loan. And the loans come in kind of denominations of £10. And when you choose to take a loan, you're going to take not only that amount of money, the £10, but you're also going to take one of these loan tiles. And they're going to basically cost you a lot of money if you have any outstanding loans at the end of the game. But you can pay them back at any time, but you have to pay them back at £15. So if you've got cash flow problems, taking loans is going to be an option, but you do have to factor in that you've got to have to pay that interest in order to get rid of those loans and not have to sacrifice the points at the end of the game. So again, just another little wrinkle there, just to make it a little bit more, a little bit more to think about, and something to factor in when you are choosing which cards to play, and whether that is worth the risk of not being able to pay the loan back in order to do what you want to do. I just want to cover a bit about the Borough Cards as well. So these Borough Cards are these kind of larger cards, which, as I said earlier, you do have to pay money for in order to get them, and they're they're generally pretty much more expensive than the average cards you'll pay. And as I said, they'll give you either more cards to draw, they'll give you the ability to get rid of poverty, and they'll simply give you straight up points as well. And not only that, some of them give you ongoing benefits, which is really cool, because I think this is one of the factors of the game that I did find the most interesting, where some of them will let you do things such as, when you're playing the cards, you normally have to discard a card of the same colour. Some might say, you don't have to do that anymore. You can discard any colour to play any card, but you'd have to pay £1 in order to do so. Some might say, when you do run your city, you don't have to take a poverty for each card in your hand. So again, really powerful abilities there. But the thing about this is that obviously you're going to get a lot of points for taking these Borough Cards, so you're going to want to do them quite regularly. But when you do take a new one, you have to replace the ability of the existing one, which can be quite a big sacrifice to make. And not only that, the Borough Cards are divided into kind of a few different sets. So you've got the ones north of the River Thames and the ones south of the River Thames, and some of the cards you play when you activate your city can kind of synergize with those those different sets. So it might say take X amount of points for each northern borough card you got, or something like that. So that's where the synergies come in. The deck of cards that you're going to play through is layered. So you've got like the A set card and the B sets and the C sets, and so as the game progresses, they are going to get gradually more powerful and more expensive. So it does have a bit of progression that way, but ultimately I think the cards generally do work in the same way throughout. They just kind of ramp up in their abilities. So mechanically, this game is very simple. As I said, boiled down into those 4 easy steps, or 4 easy choices that you're going to have to make on your turn. But I think where the main decisions go into is when to activate your city, because as I said, you do want the rewards all the time, obviously, to get your points and to get more money, but just that poverty is such a difficult thing to balance. And as I said, you don't want to play it when you've got loads of cards in your hand. You've got to be careful about how many stacks you're making, because you could end up just having face down stacks which are not doing anything for you, but they're still going to give you the poverty. So yeah, there's a lot to factor in there, and it's almost got this kind of economic feel to it, which is quite hard to wrap your head around at times. Balance of the game, the player balance of the game in terms of the different strategies you can take being equal in their kind of opportunity is, I think it's very well done, because Something I noticed is that if players want to be completely, ballsy and make a huge tableau of cards and run their city to get really powerful benefits, obviously you're going to take a lot of poverty to counteract that. So if someone has got a really streamlined city that they want to run, they're obviously not going to be taking as much poverty, but they're not going to be getting as much reward as well. So those two things really do kind of, counteract each other very well. And at the end of the game, your scoring will reflect that, which is really nice. The game takes about an hour to an hour and a half to play. For me personally, I think it did outstay its welcome a bit because, as I said, the cards aren't hugely varied, and it did feel like you're pretty much doing the same thing throughout. Obviously, you're getting your bigger tableau as the game goes on, and you're going to be getting, managing your poverty and stuff is going to really ramp up. But I did think it would have been nicer for it to take maybe about 45 minutes because I really did feel like it did start to drag on a bit longer than it should have, because as I said, it's a very big stack of cards you've got to get through. Uptime of the game is really good, to be fair. There is, as I said, the actions are very simple and very snappy, and there's not really a huge amount to brain burn yourself or to give you analysis paralysis, because mostly the cards are pretty similar in their feel. And if you need money, you're going to have to activate your city to get money. If you need to get rid of poverty, you know what you've got to do. So there's not a huge amount of things pulling you in different directions, which is quite nice. Replayability wise, personally, this is where I had a bit of an issue with the game. I think there's not a whole lot to explore in terms of different things to do. Ultimately, a lot of the games are going to feel very similar because there is not lots of different kind of things that mesh together. There's not very ultra powerful synergies that you need to explore. Ultimately, there's not a lot of different things to go after. There's either the points, the money, the poverty. That's pretty much what this game is about. So there's not kind of out the box thinking that you can go explore time and time again. Most of that comes from the Borough Cards, but as I said, that's a one-off thing, and you're going to keep replacing that. So you've not got that real strong engine building feel. The player interaction mainly comes from the relationship between how much poverty you have with the other players, because as I said, you want to keep at least on a level playing field and not have to not overwhelm yourself with poverty, because that's going to be a very difficult position to come back from. Also, the discard board, as I mentioned, is something to counter into the player interaction. Aesthetically, the game is absolutely stunning. I love the art direction in this game. I think it is absolutely wonderfully illustrated. It has this very charming feel to it. The Borough Cards look incredible. The building illustrations are great. The characters are really kind of welcoming, and they just look it. From a visual aspect, I think the game is brilliant. Component quality as well, the cards have a really good stock, has a very clean iconography, just a very slick looking game, and I'm very impressed with the component quality and just the visual appeal of the game. And the theme of the game is really nice. I mean, I'm obviously from England, so I've been to a lot of these places, which obviously does factor in, but I think the theme is, this game almost feels like would be a great souvenir, because there is so much different artwork of all the different regions in London, all the different, the iconic landmarks and stuff like that. And almost all the cards look like postcards. It's just a fantastic package in terms of its theme and its artwork. And it's just, I can really see this game appealing to to tourists and stuff like that, because this would make a really great souvenir. And not only that, I mean, the game itself is solid, so it would act as almost as a kind of a great tool to get people into the hobby, because you're more kind of civilian people who aren't as nerdy as we are would pick up this game because it looks so nice, and maybe give it a go and think, oh, you know what, this game isn't as brainless as a lot of the games we used to play when we were kids. So this is that's a really nice touch there. Setup and teardown time is really nice, to be fair. You've got the 3 different layers of cards, give them a shuffle and you're pretty much good to go. The scalability of the game works well. I mean, I think it's going to work equally as well as 2, 3 or 4. So yeah, no issues there at all. And if I had to compare this game to anything, I'm not really sure what I would give it to. I mean, I think there'll be a lot of kind of gateway level gamers who would really like this game and enjoy this game. I see players who would play games like Wingspan would enjoy this because it's got a very similar weighting. It's got that almost similar feel to it where you're building stuff up and then running your engine. So I would recommend to play this game to players who like games of that weighting. But overall for me, this is a really solid design. I mean, Martin Wallace is a game designer who's hugely acclaimed. This is actually the first game of his I've ever played. I've never played Brass or anything like that. But I must admit, my expectations that this game was going to be a lot heavier than what it was, and would have a lot more going on than what it was. Maybe that's where the the grinding of my expectations in the game came together, and I was a bit underwhelmed with how the game was. And that's not in terms of its design, it's just in terms of its complexity. There wasn't a lot for me to really, to get me excited. I couldn't see some really powerful combinations. That being said, I did like the different kind of feel of the game where you've got to constantly worry about your poverty rather than just, keep building up and just smashing your tableau through again and again and again. So I like the way that the game did factor that in, that you can't just do that. You do have to think about when you're going to use it. You're going to have to manage your hand quite carefully, think about what cards you're going to get rid of and stuff like that. So there is some decisions to go into this, but ultimately for me, there wasn't enough, variability in what the cards did. Some of them might be, don't pay anything but get 2 points. Some of them might say, pay £1 but get 4 points. Some might say, discard a card but get 3 points. So they're very similar in their feel, but they just have a kind of a relative cost associated to that. And for me, that just wasn't enough for me to keep coming back to this game. Now that being said, I did enjoy my play of it. It's not going to stay in my collection or anything like that. But yeah, as I said, I can really see this game appealing to gateway gamers or players who don't want to go, take that next step beyond, games of the weight of Wingspan and stuff like that. These family-weighted games. This is something they can really check out and enjoy. And as I said, the game is just beautiful to look at, which is, is a great thing. So yeah, that's my thoughts on London. A solid game, but one that I personally, wasn't mad about. But yeah, objectively, the game is very solid and well put together. It gets a decent verdict from me. I've put it at 6.6, which again is certainly not a negative review whatsoever. It just isn't quite for me or what I'm looking for. So that concludes my review of London. If you have enjoyed the review, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. Check out my other reviews too. You can also support me by following me on Instagram and Patreon as well. So I'll put the links below for those. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.